All right. Perfect, man. We've finally got this thing rolling now. Having some technical issues, but we got it finally, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How's life been lately, Mark?
Oh man, things have been good. A lot of playing this summer. It's been a super busy one, and I'm prepping right now to play in Europe in about 3 weeks. I'm over there for a month with a band, and yeah, so things have been rocking.
Is this with Floater or a different band?
This is not actually. I've got a Halloween show coming up with Floater, which is going to be really awesome at the Crystal Ballroom here in Portland. And then I head out a few hours later to the airport and playing the entire month of November with the band Three for Silver, which is kind of based between Portland and Bellingham, Washington.
Yeah.
And did a European tour over with them last spring and headed back over this fall.
That is awesome, man. How do you even get ready to leave the country? Like, I know that's a big step, right?
Yeah, honestly, for me, getting ready in general, whether we're talking about a hiking trip or just a local tour or a trip abroad, whether it's touring or just vacationing, I'm such a spreadsheet and document like list geek. I've got my packing lists already.
Yeah.
I pull up my Three for Silver tour Europe pack list and go through it and revise it a little bit. But for the most part, most of the thinking has been done already, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Now, what about as far as your gear, like your kit and everything? Is that flown over, or do you rent a kit when you go over?
Good question. Yeah, in a situation like this, there's just no way that I can take much of anything with me. I took cymbals last time. I'd actually gotten a new set of cymbals from Sabian last tour with the full intention of leaving them over there in the band's Munich storage space so that I wouldn't have to bring them back every time. And I liked them too much, so I brought them home. so so I'm trying that again this time. I just got I got a duplicate of those crash cymbals in a different ride that I'm intending to take and again leave there. I hope that I don't bring them home. But as far as the drum set goes, last time I we got a drum set from the band's booking agency, which is in Vienna, Austria, and this time I'm trying to save everybody the driving of doing that and the hassle. So I'm working with Yamaha right now to get a kit when I get to Hamburg right after landing, and then I'll keep that in the storage space in Munich as well. So in the future, hopefully, I won't have to be going back and forth trying to get gear.
Yeah. Now, are you playing Yamaha recording custom like you have at home, or are you just playing whatever they can give to you, like a stage custom or tour custom?
Over there, I actually have requested a stage custom because that's what I've been using with Three for Silver here,
Oh, cool.
and I play a big mix of stuff with Floater here. I have kind of a classic older set of recording customs, as you know, and wanted to play those ever since I saw and heard Dave Weckl play those on his Master Plan album years ago, and I
Oh,
saw
yeah.
those Cherrywood recording customs on the cover. But I do have my most recent kit is a tour custom kit that is just phenomenal, and I play stage custom and one of the 50th anniversary kits, which is like a maple absolute. And yeah, kind of a variety of stuff along with an old vintage Yamaha kit. But I've been using a stage custom with Three for Silver, so I just decided to just kind of duplicate that kit over there, so it's the same rig.
Dude, those are really good kits. I bought one back in 2017. I got the bop sizes. So I've got an
Yeah,
18 kick, 12, and a 14. And man, that kit records so well, and it has such a pure sound to it. Like, it's easy to tune. I love those stage customs.
yeah, you're completely right. Super easy to tune. I've actually had a lot of fun with those. The bop sizes are exactly what I'm using with them,
Oh,
which
cool.
some people are really surprised to hear I'm playing like an 18 with Three for Silver, because it tends to get pretty ruckus and rocking at times. But I really love that little kit. It's just a lot of fun, and I've got the natural finish here. I think I'm going to do the cranberry red stain over there, just so that when I see 3 for Silver photos, I know whether it's in the US or not based on the color of the drum set.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're so easy to tune, and I've had so much fun either cranking them up and going kind of beboppy with them for some local gigs, or at times almost letting those heads be detuned on there, kind of like somebody might have done back in the day with pinstripes on a recording custom kit or something, and let them just be these low, almost like flabby, fat toms, and those little 12 and 14-inch toms, the little rack and floor on there, can totally do it, man. It's so much fun.
Total thunder.
Yeah, exactly. From the smallest, unassuming little kit. I've had so many sound guys really surprise. You pop a little porthole in that 18-inch kick and a little bit of dampening, and drop those heads, and it can be pretty awesome.
Yeah, man. That's the thing is, like, I feel like sometimes we feel like we need to have some of the most expensive gear, but man, you could take that $500 or $600 kit and go play like tours, just like you're talking about doing. You can teach with it. And another cool thing I just thought about was with you traveling and going overseas. I mean, that kit is probably found everywhere all over the world. So if there's anything that goes wrong, any parts you need to replace or anything like that, it's in an easy fix because it's easy accessible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of the case just with Yamaha as a brand in general. If you're doing SIR rental in the States or working with a rental company overseas, they're going to have Yamaha gear. It's one of the, small handful of brands that is, like you said, going to be accessible and on hand. So you can get a replacement part, or you can get something that fits the bill, that fits right in with the same mounting hardware that you already have. And I love the Yamaha hardware so much. I mean, I've been using the several lines of their hardware over the years, but the new lightweight Crosstown,
Yeah, I've
the
seen that.
HW3 pack, that is so great. And I've been using it a bunch for just local gigs, and that's what I requested over there with this kit, because we're just going to be, quick in and out of a bunch of venues. It's a fast-paced slam tour. I think we're doing. I'm missing the first 2 dates of the tour because I'm playing this Halloween show and then meeting the band after they leave the Netherlands. But I think in the 4 weeks that I'm there, we have 20 shows in 5 countries. And so that small stage custom kit, the sizes of it, as well as the lightweight hardware, man, it just makes like the quick in and out everywhere so easy. It's great.
It does, man. I've been using mine, same sizes and everything, and I've used, I have the DW flush bass lightweight hardware that I use with mine, and I've been playing shows like that since 2017. Super easy to get in and out. But recently, the band that I play with is called Crenshaw Trucking Band, and we wanted to go big or go home. So I decided to buy a new PDP kit, the classic Maple series that they have.
Nice.
So now I'm running a 26 kick, and then a 13 rack, and a 14 and 16 floor. And I'm still running the lightweight flush bass hardware with it. But man, there's so much work and effort now into lugging that big kit around. So it's like, man, I wish I had somebody to come help me out a little bit. But the going back to those bop sizes, it's perfect for doing those quick gigs and getting in and out, like you say. And you can't beat the quality, man.
Yeah, I'm totally loving it. You mentioned the huge kit. I haven't played sizes like that in so many years, but there was an artist I used to work with, this guy Einstein, the producer, and I did the full-on 26-inch kick, 13-inch rack, 16, 18-inch floor toms, something that is very rarely been something that I've done, not only those sizes, but kind of the 1 up, 2 down sort of configuration. And it was so fun. But yeah, that's a lot of big drums to haul around and try to fit in your car.
Most definitely, man. Well, let's talk about also education. You are also an educator and teacher, and I'm sure when you're not playing, that's where you're mainly spending your time, right?
Yeah, for sure. These days I do a lot of online lessons. So I'm teaching via Zoom, and then I throughout the year do a lot of school programs as well. Artists in residence at a variety of schools, going in and either doing a one-off assembly or anything between that and spending a week or two at a school doing an artist residence and doing a bunch of individual classes.
So are these like percussion classes? Like, are you teaching like different types of percussion, or are you teaching rudimentary type things?
It's all over the place, and sometimes I'll just be tailoring a program to what a music teacher or band director kind of needs for their students at the time. But I do have a couple of programs that I teach quite a bit that I developed, and they are more world percussion focused. I wouldn't say that I get to perform things along those lines a lot, but my personal interest and studies over the years have been in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Southeast Asia, and so in West Africa. So my main programs that I'm teaching, I have a program called the Sights and Sounds of Ghana, and that is a program that focuses on instruments that I brought back from Ghana, West Africa several years ago, and has students playing some traditional styles of the Ewe people from Southeast Ghana, and doing some language and dancing that fits along those. Then I have a program called Island Drumming that's focused on rhythms from Cuba and Puerto Rico. A program called the Hand Drumming Crash Course, which is not at all culturally specific, just focusing on general hand drum techniques that students can apply to different styles. And yeah, like I said, from there, things get kind of morphed into whatever a band director might be looking for their students, or I might visit a college and just do something that's more drum set focused, or a jazz band program at a high school or something. So a lot of those kind of peppered throughout the year.
Yeah. And I think I saw just recently on Facebook where you were paying reverence to one of your old instructors you had studied with, Walfredo. Is that right?
Yeah, well, Fredo Reyes Sr., I hadn't, I've certainly learned a whole ton from, but I wouldn't say studied formally, but I had the absolute honor several years ago of working on a book project with him, the late Elliot Fine, and David Stanek. And we spent some time down in Concord, California, where Walfredo was living, working on a book called The Two-in-One Drummer for Alfred Music Publishing. And it was really based on what he and some other percussionists were doing, coming from Cuba back in the 50s and such, where one hand was playing congas and the other hand had a stick playing drum set. So he kind of sounded like this two-in-one drummer, percussionist and drum set player at the same time. Yeah. And I mean, you can't hang around those guys working on a project like that without learning a ton. So was he a teacher of mine? Yes, absolutely. But he was really, a colleague and a friend, and getting to know him and his wife and some of the family has just been such a treat. And the number of insane stories that a guy like that has. I mean,
yeah.
The laughs. I mean, David Stanek and I are still regularly just bringing up things that happened or were said, on our visits down there, and a pretty epic human being for sure.
That's awesome, man. And a lot of this stuff is so cultural based, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much of that no matter how long I may choose to study it, during my life, I will never fully understand and absorb, because guys like him were just raised in a culture that these rhythms were just a part of. I think a lot of what he knew and played wasn't anything he learned, but it was just things that were born into him and, came from where he was raised. So it's pretty special.
Yeah, definitely, man. And where did you study at to learn most about, all these different types of percussion?
Yeah, I first studied years ago at a now defunct music school in Minneapolis called it was called Music Tech at the time, in Minneapolis, and then after I had left, at that time it was an unaccredited music program, so it was just a music performance diploma that you would get, but no degree or anything. And then they eventually did become accredited, and they moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, and it became the McNally Smith College of Music. That school as well folded at some point, but that's where I met and worked with David Stanek and Gordy Knutson, who had played with the Steve Miller Band for years, Paul Stuber, Jesse Wheeler, all these amazing players. And those guys really piqued my interest in world styles and really pushed me into some of those areas that I might not have originally pursued, kind of going there as a young metalhead, just wanting to play rock all the time. But when I got out of college there, I just really wanted to dive into some of that stuff more. So I eventually set my sights on Ghana because I had learned some rhythms from West Africa and knew that a lot of those rhythms really were the roots of all the jazz and pop and everything that I'd been spending time playing here, and understanding that even there in West Africa things have evolved and changed. I still wanted to get as close to those roots as I could. So my initial trip to study abroad was to this little village of Kopaia in Ghana. And after that, the travel bug bit, and I really couldn't come home without having plans of where to go next. So
that's so cool.
Definitely made several trips to Puerto Rico, the end of every July, to attend La Fiesta de Santiago Apostol, this festival that's very bomba drumming heavy, and study some plena down there and a bunch of styles in Cuba. So yeah, I've always tried in my travels to get as close to some of the local music as I possibly can. And even if I'm not officially there to study, see if I can dig some stuff up and maybe find a teacher and take a lesson or two really quickly just to get something new while I'm in a different area.
Yeah, that is great, man. Would you say that all of these different types of styles that you've learned, do you think that it comes out in your playing when you play with these different artists?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it has to. There are some gigs that I play that stuff probably infiltrates less. If you're trying to play a very poppy, repetitious pattern that already is kind of set in stone, so there's not as much room for improv or other influences. But when I'm creating drum parts, when I'm playing with floater, which definitely has its jammy aspects at times, and things get a little bit more open and psychedelic and experimental, those things that those rabbit holes that you've went deep down, like, are going to come back and sneak their way in. And I think on top of actual rhythms, it's just at times using some of the attitude that comes out in playing some of those styles. Certainly when I was studying in West Africa, I was pushed by some teachers there to dig in and I don't want to say play louder necessarily, although that can come with it at times, but just play with a more intention and intensity than I probably ever had before or was ever really pushed to. And I know for a fact when I got back from West Africa after doing that for 3.5 months, my jazz playing was very different, and bandmates I was playing with were like, wow, you're definitely digging in and playing a lot harder
with gusto.
So yeah, exactly. And so I think that those influences, whether it's with the attitude or the rhythms, are things you can always kind of pull out of the toolbox and pull into a situation when you want.
Yeah. Speaking of toolbox, we were talking before this podcast about speaking education to our listeners today and talking about items that we need in that toolbox and how many people, that we've taught or that we see play from time to time that they haven't learned the concept of the basic stroke types and stick heights, hand technique, rebound, all of that. So that's something that I'd like for us to kind of go into today. What's your experience right now with your students? Like, how do you normally start someone who is a beginner or someone who's been playing for a long time, but they don't have those tools in their toolbox? Like, what's your approach? And I know it's something that we can kind of expand on together.
Yeah, I mean, you start talking about the tools in the toolbox, and that can go so many different directions. But to at least start with one, you mentioned the stroke types,
Yeah.
and some people may have some different variations of these, but I definitely, whether a student's brand new or they've been playing for a while, I definitely try to at least assess at first whether they're kind of using stroke, or I should say stick heights, to, at the very least, manage their dynamics.
Yeah.
But those can also really determine your tempo and things like that. And if it's something that I don't see, we dive into the what are commonly referred to as the 4 stroke types, and those really being like a full stroke, a downstroke, a tap stroke, and an upstroke, and that students will work on them individually and then also kind of often in that order. But I normally draw a little bit of a grid. Down the left-hand side, I have each of those 4 stroke type names. So we have full, down, tap, up, and then across the top, I say stroke name, and then I say starts, ends, sounds, followed by. That's what I always write.
Okay.
And so across the top row, the stroke type is full stroke, and I say starts high, ends high, sounds loud, followed by loud. Meaning if you're starting with your stick tip far away from the drum, so you've got your wrist pulled back so that stick tip is in the air, and you play from that height and you pull the stick back up to that height. So you're starting high, ending high. In general, compared to other notes, these things can be relative. Dynamics, can be different depending on a room and a style and things. But compared to the other stroke types, you're going to create a loud sound, and you're in a position preparing to follow that with another loud sound. And I always talk to students about the concept of leave. If you're a pool player at all, I am not a very good pool player, yeah. but I do remember when I was playing a little bit more with a buddy, that when I was introduced to the concept of leave and not just smacking the cue ball into the next, into the 5 ball to hit the pocket, and that was as far as my thinking went. But when I thought about this concept of leave and where I'm leaving the ball after that cue ball hits the 5, it upped my game a little bit. Again, not a ton, but I was thinking about how I'm going to reflect off of that 5 ball to be in position for the next shot that I'm already thinking ahead. And that to me is the whole point of the 4 stroke types.
That's a great concept, the way you just spoke about.
Cool. Yeah, to me, that's the thing that makes students kind of understand why you would even do this. It's like, oh, why don't I just, try to hit it softer or try to hit it louder? It's like, well, you can, but using these stick heights not only makes that easy, but also gets you into position for your next note. And then it takes a little left brain power to get that figured out. But once you do, and some muscle memory sets in, now you're going to be able to do those things faster as well. So you're, creating more efficiency. But yeah, that's kind of across the top line of my grid. And then next is the downstroke, which starts high, just like the full stroke, but ends low. So you're not letting that stick tip come all the way back up. Sounds loud, just like the full stroke, but it's followed by a soft note, because now your stick tip is just above that head. And so you're ready to play one of the last 2 on the grid. And those are obviously super beneficial. That downstroke is something that many times, even if somebody's been playing for a while, if they've never actually intentionally practiced that, it can be eye-opening.
Oh yeah.
Being able to play that stroke to that high loud note but have the stick stop just above the drum not only preps you for playing things like paradiddles with an accent on the first note, but also playing a backbeat on the snare drum followed by that tiny little ghost note that sounds like a little delay where you're like boom gaga boom gaga. You
Yeah.
want that second note to be softer. And then third line is the tap stroke. So starts low, ends low, sounds soft, ends or followed by soft. And then that upstroke, which again is a nasty one for a lot of people if they haven't spent any time working on it. But it starts low like the tap, ends high. So you're barely tapping the stick and you're pulling it away. I often have students practice starting with the stick just above the drum head and intentionally not touch the head and just pull their stick up and just imagine they're pulling away like they touched a hot stove or something.
Yeah.
And don't even let them actually play the drum the first couple times, and then eventually let that connect as you're pulling up. So starts low, ends high, sounds soft, which doesn't look like it. When you see somebody do an upstroke and you see this yank up in the air, it's like your brain tells you that something loud must have happened, but it's ready to be followed by a loud note.
Yes.
So yeah, kind of that little 16 square grid is something I always draw out for students. And then we obviously work on each of them individually, leaving a little pause in between, especially with the downstroke and the upstroke to kind of reset. And then eventually put them together in different combinations. And then I really want them to understand why we're doing that. So we get into alternated hands playing triplets with an accent on the first note. So you're getting right, left, right, left, but it's actually like a down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down, up, tap.
When you're doing, when you're teaching those 4 basic stroke types like that, are you doing individual hands and then unison together whenever you teach those stroke types? Or
yeah, I would say I do often use the unison thing because I think it's really common for most of us to have far less issue with something like that with our dominant hand and our weak hand. I remember my left hand doing an upstroke; it would just wobble all over the place,
Yeah.
And I realized, it took me time to realize this, but I realized, oh, my left hand was not turned in the same way that my right hand was turned. So I was in a position where my right hand hinge of the wrist could operate really well, and my left was cocked to the side a little bit, and it didn't operate the same way. And when we do that unison thing where one hand is mirroring the other, more often than not, that weak hand just naturally copies the strong hand.
yeah.
So I'll get students doing that and then try to get the dominant hand out of the equation and make sure that the weak hand still feels the same way. You didn't revert back to something else when the strong hand's not in the picture, and then combine them in different ways.
Yeah, I've got a section in my book that's that focuses on those 4 basic stroke types, and then it's a lot of exercises. Just I didn't go through the full grid, but just in eighth notes, just being able to put the accents in, and then underneath telling you whether, is this a down, a tap, or upstroke. And man, I've seen that really help a lot of my students. A sad story about me, myself, I never had a formal drum lesson until I was 24 years old, I believe. And I had band all through school. My brother basically taught me rudiments and how to sight read from 8 years old up until I was 12 when I first got into like 6th grade band. And then my band director, he knew, just enough of the basics just to kind of show us how to read music and play rudiments and stuff and how to hold the sticks. And then the rest of it was, we're kind of calling our age here, but I'm 42, and we didn't really have the internet back then. So everything you learned had to be either from a book or you had to go buy a VHS tape. And I never bought any of the VHS tapes, but I did have like Modern Drummer magazine and stuff like that, and instructional books. But man, when I first got in, I went to college later on in life. I for the second time. The first time I went right after school and finished with an electrical degree, and then decided later on at 26 I wanted to go back for drums. And I studied with Pat Petrillo at UNCP and Tracy
Yeah.
Wiggins as my percussion director. And man, it was like being thrown to the wolves in there. Like I had to learn all about, accents and taps and learning those stroke types. And like because of me putting the hours in, it literally like it changed my whole world of playing, knowing how to keep those stick heights in check and not letting the stick rebound up when it's not supposed to have yourself
Yeah.
prepared for the next move. And it was just such a game changer. And when you're trying to teach younger students right now, they don't quite grasp the fact of how important these little things are, but it just makes the big picture so much better.
It really does. And I think a lot of times the thing I have to make sure as a teacher that I do is, show students why I'm encouraging them to work on something like this, because sometimes I can show how it's an efficient way to get your dynamics and build some speed, playing your alternator triplets or playing paradiddles with an accent, wherever you choose it to be. But that might not be a student's end goal. They're like, yeah, but I don't really want to be playing on a pad, playing paradiddles all the time. But then when you take that and you show how that can affect hi-hat grooves, and this doesn't matter whether you're just bending from the wrist, playing all of your notes, or whether you're incorporating more of a molar technique and there's some arm involved, these same concepts kind of apply. They just kind of get slightly tweaked and morphed a bit. But we start getting into a little bit of like a whip tap motion on the hi-hat and how you can dig, kind of sync the quarter note and make your groove feel better, or flip-flop that and go tap whip, which is a little bit of like an upstroke, downstroke, whether you're incorporating a little molar or not. And all of a sudden your hi-hat accent is on an upbeat. You make the whole thing feel really funky. Going to like a cowbell rhythm or rim or shell that you might play on like a Cuban cascara rhythm, like a tat 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 tat. But if you start actually incorporating some common accents, you want to get like tat 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 tat, using some ups and downs on some of those, and a full or a tap in necessary spots completely makes that easier. Again, maybe initially it doesn't make it easier because the student's like, oh, I have to think about this so much harder. I could just play the rhythm itself faster. It's like, yeah, you probably can. But when you kind of absorb this a little bit, then now that accent pattern, kind of a little bit more of an interesting dynamic contour to that rhythm, is something that comes to you pretty easily. And like you said, it really is a game changer. I've seen students' eyeballs open up just going, oh my gosh, that's so cool, that's great.
Yeah. And another thing like you're talking about is we've got to feed this thing or sell it to our students. And it just got me thinking a minute ago, when you're trying to teach rudiments to a kid, it's like the least appealing thing in the world to them. So, and knowing these basic stroke types, man, definitely set you up for all the mechanics you need to be able to play all the rudiments and all the hybrid rudiments as well. And I think one way that I try to sell it to them is I try to say, think of, rudiments and hybrid rudiments as like skateboard tricks for drumming. Is how I like to think of it. It's like having another trick, and you could take these things, most of them, and expand them across the kit, playing grooves or fills with them. And if we didn't have those stroke types down, these rudiments won't sound as musical as what we could have.
Yeah, like you said, there's definitely this selling it to the student. And I'm honest with students when we first dive into this stuff, especially if I feel any reluctance. Because every once in a while you get a student who just geeks out on the technique stuff. They're like, oh yeah, that's great. I just practiced on my pad for hours every day last week. I'm like, sweet. But most of the time that's not the case. Kids are getting into lessons because they want to, play their favorite rock tunes or something. Yeah. And you have to make that connection because there is value in doing this. And I'll be straight up with students and admit to them as we get into it. I'm like, I prefer playing drum set over sitting on a pad as well. Over the years, I've learned the value in spending time on my pad, and working out stuff because I can apply it to the kit. But I'll be straight with you. Like, if this stuff didn't apply, if this didn't sound freaking amazing when we get it on the drum set, I wouldn't make you waste your time with it because I wouldn't waste my time with it either. Like, why, like there's no reason to work on some sort of technique that is not at all applicable to the instrument you want to be playing, unless you're just doing it for the gymnastics and athleticism of the whole thing, which, like that's a whole nother,
Oh yeah.
a whole nother thing, because there's an element of that in any musical instrument world, and to each his or her own. But for me, I know I have limited time. I want to be working on things in the practice room that make my performing better. And I'm not going to waste my students' time. And so I'm like, hey, buddy, I know this isn't the coolest thing right now. You don't love this, but this is what it's going to sound like on the kit when we get this smoking, and,
Yeah.
that cool paradiddle-diddle pattern split between a couple of sound sources on the kit sounds amazing.
Most definitely. That's the thing, is being able to produce something to show them and say, hey, we gotta have some vegetables before we can get the dessert in here, right?
Yep.
Oh man. Well, besides basic stroke types, also technique. So being able to utilize rebound on a pad. Like, I know you spoke of molar technique earlier, and something I learned from Pat whenever I was at Pembroke was being able to utilize fingers, wrist, and forearm together. And there was molar involved in that. But we learned a lot about like push-pull technique and stuff. So what are some techniques that you're teaching right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to technique in general, I am not a believer that there's one thing that works for everybody.
Yes.
I think everybody's bodies are different, and some things just cognitively kind of make sense and connect with different people faster. But I think the important thing to do is just explore as many things as you can until you find those things that work for you and your situation. So I'm certainly not a master of probably any, different technique or style. I admire the Jojo Meyer types, who, like, his video, he'll go through like all of these different things, and he's kind of mastered all these hand techniques, and then here's all these different ways that people play bass drum doubles or whatever, and he's mastered all of them.
Yeah.
But I do personally try to dabble in as many different things as I can, and I try to encourage my students to do that and go down a rabbit hole, even if it doesn't initially come very comfortably to you, because most of these things don't. So when it comes to hand drum technique, molar is certainly a thing, that can get integrated, and I use in certain situations, and try to get students to explore that a little bit. But I also really want students to try to take all of that arm stuff out and be able to control, like I said, just with your wrist or with your fingers, switching between a little bit more of a German or American grip to fully thumbs on top, more of a French timpani grip, and working on your fingers a little bit. Again, that's something that I love, having students work on unison. You were mentioning that earlier. Because you're going to find one of your hands kind of trying to do something that the other hand's not. And again, experimenting with that, with all fingers engaged on the stick or individual fingers. So you're doing it with, just holding your fulcrum and just your middle finger playing on the stick. And some of those are exercises that are, I think, just going to help strengthen the fingers no matter what and give you a little bit more control. But the overarching French grip technique might be the sort of thing that really allows you to play some fast singles in a situation that, I see some people drop into kind of blast beaty sort of stuff, switching, moving that thumb on top and getting those left fingers engaged. So it's not just a timpani technique necessarily. Drum set players can apply that, and I think that control at a low level, being able, whether you're using fingers or even just your wrist with your stick tips barely above the drum head is something that a lot of people avoid working on.
Yeah, like fast twitch muscle.
Yeah, being able to play fast but stay that close to the drum head is really hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really encouraging students to explore as many things as possible. You mentioned push pull. Gordy Knutson, when I was at Music Tech, had a lot of resources on kind of the open close technique, and there are these slight variations of push pull, open close, that people kind of compare and contrast. But that sort of thing is great, because to me, in that one wrist motion, you get the two strokes at the same time, and opening that up for ride cymbal speed, or a sequence of more than two notes on your snare drum can be so useful.
Yeah, I think that's a cool idea, man. It's almost like the Bruce Lee concept. It's like not having a style, and using things, again, like having our toolbox. So going in, practicing molar, practicing those rebound strokes, and then working on finger technique, going to French grip, and then being able to do the push-pull technique. That could be perfect for playing like a shuffle groove. So,
yeah,
or playing off of the ride like that with push-pull or French. So there's so many different factors and different options. It's good to have options sometimes. In this case, it would be. And I guess what would be really cool would have maybe you and I could get together sometime and put something out that would be a selection of exercises that would focus on each specific technique. That would be like, hey, here's a beginner's guide to having a basis of each one of these techniques that could help you in this specific style or this occasion. So I don't know, just got an idea brewing up here all of a sudden.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, it's kind of endless. I think that no matter what you explore, you're going to find people using different techniques, or what you might consider quote unquote wrong techniques.
Yeah.
I experience that with students all the time, where they'll be like, "Oh, like watch this video of this guy, like, his technique's so bad." And then you watch, you're like, he's killing.
Yeah.
He's like, his feel is great and he's playing super fast. So is his technique bad? Or is it just not for you? Like, it might look a little goofy. I've certainly encountered a few drummers. I'm not going to drop any names, but probably everybody has their own favorites. But I've encountered a few amazing world-class drummers over the years that, when I've watched them play, I'm like, oh man, I did not imagine that he looked like that playing, because that looks uncomfortable, or and there's something to be said for ergonomics and making sure you're being healthy. But I think that when it comes to technique, there are so many different variations of things, and not any one thing works for every occasion. And some people will totally fight me on that, but I make students aware of the fact, a lot of my students, if they're high school students, they're working with me for some drum set stuff, but then they might be in drumline at school, and they might be in jazz band and going to a jazz camp and working with somebody else there. And I'm always making those students aware that all 3 or 4 or 5 of these, drum and percussion instructors you work with might tell you different things about, like what position your left hand should be in.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's because of that context that person's working in. Like, you're in drumline, they want you to be playing traditional grip, and they want this, right hand to be in exactly this position. And that might not be the same thing that you find works for you on this push-pull position, getting in position for push-pull on the hi-hat, like you mentioned. And that's okay. Like, you don't, like, none of these are necessarily wrong. And it's okay to kind of adhere to what that drumline instructor wants you to do for that situation. But then outside of that, explore a little bit.
Yeah. If we were going to point people in the right direction to start learning some of these things, the 4 basic stroke types and learning different hand techniques, like, what would be the best resource for them to go look up right now?
The 4 stroke types in general, I'm not exactly sure that. I mean, I'm
I've got
sure
a
there
video
are.
up, but
Oh, okay. Well, everybody should check out Matt Dudley's video on the four stroke types. I don't, I do have a masterclass video online that I had done live during the pandemic when I was doing weekly masterclasses, and four stroke types ended up getting covered many times, but I definitely have one focused just on that, but I don't think that's probably as accessible as yours. So, but yeah, there are definitely some resources online. I mentioned Jojo Mayer's hand technique DVD. That's the
secret weapons for the modern drummer.
yes,
Right.
exactly. And that something like that I think is great, just to not only get kind of an introduction in or to many different approaches that people have, and same for volume 2, the bass drum technique one, but also to see someone who's taken each of those to extremes and mastered them so well. Because I think if you go through a video like that and don't treat it like entertainment, and instead actually treat it like an educational tool, and stop the video and spend
Yes.
3 weeks working on one of those techniques and then come back and check out the next one, which is something that most of us do with edutainment videos these days.
Oh, yeah.
And we just kind of watch them and then wait for the next one to come out and don't actually work on the stuff. But if you actually spend time with several of those, I think that anybody is going to find a couple of techniques that are new to them, that they find are helpful and can apply to their playing.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Man, I think we covered quite a bit as far as the education stuff goes, and you've got a newer book out right now, right, with the Slam and Simon series.
Yeah, the whole Slam and Simon series has been a lot of fun. The most recent book just introduces 100 plus basic rock beats, or really just kind of covers the basics of what most of us need if we're playing with a rock band. So, we've got some eighth note grooves, some 16th grooves, some shuffles, some halftime stuff, kind of double time stuff, and working on another one of those right now that I'm pretty excited about. Actually, tour time will be a good time to sit down and knock out a bunch of that writing. I've got it all sketched out. I just need to put the final touches on each of the sections. But yeah, those are a lot of fun.
Those books have done really well on Amazon too, right? That's where everybody can purchase them.
They have, knock on wood. Yeah, you can check out all the Slam and Simon books on there. The first one of those came out in 2015, I think. The first drum set book, I think it's a little over 23,000 that have sold on there on Amazon.
That's
so
crazy.
For a music instructional book, that's pretty awesome. It's great. Some of the others, not so much. There's a rudiment book, and as we mentioned earlier, students love the rudiments less than they love playing rock beats. So, but it's important to have out there. So I really wanted Simon and his little sidekick Rudy, his little turtle that reminds people to practice slowly,
That's great.
to make sure to be encouraging some of those rudiments a little bit as well.
Yeah, everybody needs to check those books out, and especially if you've got students or kids. It's such a great selection, and the artwork that's in it as well. Was the illustration done by your who was the illustration done by? Like
the Simon and Rudy illustrations are all done by my wife. She started those before we'd gotten married, and she's done them for each of the books. So each time, we put some sort of like iconic rock or music related logo on Simon's shirt to kind of suggest some band or something. So working out what that's going to be on the next book right now. We were just having a conversation about what the next little Simon image will look like. But yeah, it's been a fun little collaboration, and like you said, it's a great book for kids, a great series. I've had so many drum instructors and friends and some music schools supporting those and using them with their students, and even sometimes just adults who pick them up and are like, oh yeah, all of this stuff is really useful and applicable. It just happens to kind of be a little kid talking to kids in the book. I first started putting those out because I felt like most of the quote unquote kids drumming books that I've run across and tried to use with students myself are kid friendly only in the fact that, yeah, they have some cutesy cover and maybe large bulbous notation on the inside. But aside from that, if you actually read the text in it, the text is just like reads down just as if it was a regular adult book.
Yeah.
And I would continually have kids who were like, I can't read most of that, so I'm reading the stuff to them and explaining to them what words are. And, it's like, if you have a book that's just talking about ostinatos and extend or like metric modulation and, like syncopation and stuff, like the average kid is like, I don't know what this was, syncopatia, what syncopation, you're like, I don't know what that word is, so I just wanted to have a little kid like talking directly to a kid and kind of using some more youthful language and sharing some drumming.
That's great, man. You took a problem, an issue that's out there, and come up with a solution for it, especially in our field. And I think that's a great thing, Mark.
Thanks.
Now, also, I've seen recently, besides the drum stuff, you do a lot of climbing, right?
Yeah, mostly indoor right now, but I love bouldering. To me, it's not only just one of my favorite workouts, but it's one of those things that is a great workout physically and mentally. Yeah. You're staring at the wall, kind of trying to figure out why in the world you can't get up it, and that little 12-year-old kid just burned right up it in front of your eyes. And again, kind of going back to technique, it's this sort of thing that no two people necessarily will do the same way. Sometimes what works for you doesn't work for me because of strength or calluses on your fingers or wingspan. You've got a longer reach and can skip a hold that I can't skip, but I might have power and be able to just dyno to a hold and, do something that somebody else might not. So yeah, I really love bouldering. It's great.
And it teaches you too, looking for that next step, that next move, right?
Oh yeah, you're always kind of going back to the 4-stroke type thing. We're tying
like
it all together,
that,
man.
Right?
I love it. This is great. It's definitely. Sometimes I often jump on the wall without paying any attention without thinking it through much, and I kind of do that intentionally. I just want to jump on there, see if I can connect the dots. But sometimes when you're on the wall, you're too close to it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I can't see where my foot needs to go, where that hold was. And sometimes you get lucky and you flash it, you just burn right up there. Other times you're like, okay, that didn't work, and you sit down, kind of stretching and resting your arms a little bit from the workout you just had, and you're staring at the wall, just kind of thinking it through and figuring out where that next move is. Or you climb up an easy route to get to the hard part, kind of the crux of your route, and workshop a little idea. And once you make that connect 2 or 3 times, then you come back down and then prove to yourself you can start from the beginning and get through it all. And that's not at all unlike jumping straight to the chorus of this song that you're working on and, drilling that until you don't blow your tempo on the transition, and then going back to the beginning of the song, instead of just starting at the beginning every time. So many parallels to music for sure.
That's great, man. Well, Mark, what new things do you have on the horizon here soon, other than your tour going on, overseas?
Yeah. For me, always a bunch of things I'm working on. PASIC is coming up, the annual drum convention, and I chair the Percussive Art Society drum set committee, so I'm always heavily involved with all the artists coming in for that. And this is going to be the first year in a long time that I'm not going to get to attend because I'm touring in Europe in November, but middle of November is the PASIC convention, so that is always awesome and something that people should check out at pasic.org, pasic.org. But the tour with Three for Silver, I'm super excited about. It's always great to be on the road playing music, working on this Simon book, and just have a bunch of other projects like that in the works. I've got a few collaborations with people that I'll be sharing about coming up, and some non-drumming things as well, working on the next Bayfielders book. There's a book I put out early this year called The Bayfielders, which was kind of a middle grade chapter book, 12,000 words, just based on a little ghosted adventure that I actually went on when I was a little kid in Bayfield, Wisconsin. And that was fun, going back and visiting some libraries and things in the Midwest when that launched. But part of my work over tour here is working on the next Bayfielders book as well. So
that's cool. I'll have to check that out. And all your books you can find on Amazon, right?
Yes, just about everything is on Amazon. My website, powerspercussion.com, I try to keep links to a lot of those things that come out as well. But yeah, definitely some writing coming up, definitely a lot of playing, and I'm always doing a lot of recording at the home studio here. So it's always fun to be diving into new projects that kind of push me in different ways.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll put all of your links and stuff, or the link to your site, in the show notes where everybody can find it. And another thing for the listeners is Mark and I and a few of other guests that I've talked to, we're going to try to get together and have more episodes than just this one, speaking on specific education topics and stuff. So, yeah, just kind of getting back in the groove of everything, man. I was talking to you earlier. I told you I just woke up last week and decided I was going to start this thing back up, and now I'm like 4 or 5 episodes in a week.
I love it. Yeah, kudos to you for all the work it takes to get this going, and I'm excited to see that you're back at it.
Yeah, it kind of fell off. I took a long break, and I actually kind of got burnt out years ago, and tried to start it back. Had some technical issues the last go around, and that was in 2019. And then I said, you know what? When I woke up the other day, I said, I think I'm just going to try to make like a solo episode. And that stuff's been working out fairly well for me now. So I've got to get back on the horse and keep moving. And I just want to help people, man. I'm not looking to do this thing to make money or anything like that, but more so along the lines of building relationships with people like yourself. Me and you've been friends now since 2014 or 15, something like that. Mark has helped me publish a few of my books that I have out on Amazon, and he's published a ton of books himself. So it's just really cool to get to meet people, man, and there's so much of a purpose in this thing for us all. So I just really appreciate you being a part of it and taking the time to even talk to little old Matt over here in Lake Waccamaw,
Oh man, no, I appreciate you having me on board doing it, and you're right. I mean, I think that the drum world in general is just this cool, big, friendly, helpful community, and guys like you doing this to help other people and make more connections is what it's all about. So
yeah,
love seeing you back at it.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it, Mark, and we'll be in touch, and we'll have some more stuff coming soon for everybody. So thank you again for your time, buddy. It meant a lot to me.
Thank you, man. Do it soon.
That's it for this episode. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if you would, do me a big favor and go check out Mark's site over at powerspercussion.com. You'll be able to find all kinds of information about lessons, as well as all of Mark's books that he has out. And again, if you haven't yet, wherever you listen to the podcast, leave a rating and review. That way it helps other people be able to find the show, to be able to listen, and it would just be great to have a large community checking this podcast out. So again, thank you so much, and until next time, I'll see you later. That was The Escape by Gathering Gray. You can find it on all streaming platforms. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.